Me, 31 male gay, and my fiancé, 32 male bisexual, have been together for 9 years, engaged for 1. We're meant to get married in 2 months. My time with him has been perfect, literally zero complaints. Honestly, I didn't think I'd find someone who got me the way he does. Then the world remembered it hates me and decided to fuck my shit up since I had it too good for too long. Last week my fiancé sat me down and told me he wanted to discuss something with me and to keep an open mind. Sure. He said since we're getting married he wanted to know if I would be okay with him having one night where he could sleep with a woman. My heart broke instantly. My dreams and hopes and plans vanished in an instant, and the marriage I was eager to begin was dead. At the very beginning of our relationship, when he asked to be exclusive, I told him there will never be anyone else in our life. Just us. No one's coming into our bedroom, there will be no cuck fantasies, no Eiffel Towers, nothing. I made it clear if he ever asked me for anything of the sort, the relationship was over immediately, there will be no conversation about it, it's done. He agreed. He said monogamy was the only thing for him and he doesn't want anyone else. Before I keep going, I do want to explain why I am the way I am. I won't give a lot of details, actually almost none, but I'll give enough to understand, hopefully. Between the ages of 8 and 14 I was SA'd a lot by really my only friend at the time. When I was 8 he was 15. Only other kid on the street. My mother was a drug addict and cheated on my father constantly, so she didn't notice anything. My dad was never home. BC wife was awful to be around and a kid who stayed in his room alone all the time, so he wouldn't have seen anything to be concerned about anyway. I tried to tell my mother once, but I couldn't even say it before I was yelled at and told to get out of her room, and I never tried to bring it up again. Fast forward to me being a not stupid child, I put pieces together and found out why my dad was never there to help me, why my mom didn't care enough to question why the horny teen was taking me outside for hours, and when I got home I just wanted to be alone in my room. I put all of my childhood issues on cheating. As a result of my fun little quirky younger years, I am borderline. I have anxiety and panic attacks whenever I hear people screaming, and depression, blah blah blah. I have problems. After being with my fiancé for about a year and a half, I talked to him about my past and why I feel the way I do about things, and he was very understanding. Very comforting. Despite it being my story, I had to wipe his tears away a few times. I know he cares for me, I know he loves me and wants to spend our forever together. Back to present day, I am in a hotel room alone. Everyone I've told this to has said I'm crazy and stupid and need therapy. They don't understand how I can throw it all away over my partner being honest and open with me about something. He didn't actually cheat, he just wants to, lol. He has said he won't do it, he needs me more than any feeling a woman can give him. I am his everything. He's called me twice since I started typing this and messaged me really sweet things, so I'm at a point where I don't know what I'm doing. I look at the future and I see him. My entire adult life I've had the mentality of if they want to cheat they will, so he's asking me now, and if I say no he will eventually do it anyway but won't tell me next time. That is where my decision to leave comes from. He will grow to resent me for denying him this thing he wants. I don't want to be that person 30 years from now finding out my husband has had 50 affairs during our marriage with a bunch of women. When I am with someone, I'm with them. I don't look at other people, I don't entertain advances anyone makes towards me, I don't flirt with anyone else. I'm devoted in every way. People are making me feel crazy for wanting the same energy given back to me. I can't wrap my head around him wanting to kiss someone else, to be an inch away from them and smile and then start fucking. I don't want to think about it, but it's all I'm thinking about. It's been almost 8 days since I left and it's my only thought. I am losing my mind in a shitty hotel room thinking about the guy I love fucking some random woman who doesn't exist. I'm lost-eyed. What to do? I do want to say how amazing he is. He buys me flowers every Friday, he stands up for me when no one else does, he looks for me in every room, he makes me feel like I matter, he makes my grayest days bright and clear, and the smile I used to fake isn't fake anymore. He has never judged me for the things I do, he's never made me feel bad for having off days, he just makes me feel loved. My birthday was last month and he made me a book filled with pictures of us he's taken over the years, with the last page being blank so he can add our wedding picture eventually. Above each picture was what he was thinking when he took it, and below is how he was feeling at the time. Part of being me is I need constant reassurance that he does love me, so I ask him those things a lot. It means everything to me and it's my favorite thing I own. I'm just trying to say he really is great despite this one thing. He said he'll do anything for me to come back. We can push the wedding back and just work on us, or we can call it off completely and just be together. He will never bring it up again and he's deeply sorry he ever wanted to do it, and I believe him. Time changes people though. I just want an unbiased opinion from someone whose life will not change whatsoever by my decision. They tend to be more truthful. I love him, and when I look at pictures of him I hear wedding bells and I see the house he wants to buy with me and the 2 kids he wants to adopt at some point. I don't want the rehashed when trust is gone, it doesn't come back, or you know the answer. Leave. I do trust him, I don't trust the things I'm telling myself over and over about what may happen in the future. He has never given me reason to not trust him, but I don't know. Update 1. Okay, I'd if anyone actually cares about the outcome, but my original plan was to talk to him today. Bring up therapy. Maybe go back to our apartment or just stay for the rest of my hotel reservation. That did not happen. I folded. I got Dunkus Sunday night, he called me about 10:30ish and I told him where I was. BC he said he wanted to explain in person. Sober me would have said no, say that shit over the phone. Drunk me as a hoe. He came over, he started explaining, but honestly nail me to a cross, I will die for the sins I know every single one of you would commit if you could see his face. We did shit. After that he did explain. His best friend, who's always had issues with me, has been trying to convince him for months if he doesn't sleep with a woman again he will end up cheating on me in the future. He didn't believe at first, but after a few months his friend wore him down. I know he's not lying, he showed me texts going back to February, every so often his friend bringing it up. His friend is always not like me. I don't think he's okay with my fiancé being bi. First time he introduced me to his friends, his best friend was very standoffish, didn't interact with me. At one point someone asked if I was into hiking. I am, and she said best friend's name is also really into it. I said that's cool, do you know any good spots since I just moved here and haven't found any yet? He said no and started talking to someone else. Okay. Sure. Dick. Bunch of other little shit over the years, like always bringing up his ex-GFs in front of me, blah blah, you get the gist. I think he knew I'd leave if my fiancé asked me for this. My fiancé said he doesn't want to do it and he wanted me to say no. Yes, a few of you told me to just say no and he would agree and wouldn't, congratulations, and we'd move on. Wedding still on hold, I have the ring back, it's on a chain around my neck, I want therapy still with him. Too many of you convinced me in private DMs with your personal stories about how helpful it was in your relationships. You wore me down. I also want to know what a paid professional thinks about his best friend BC. Honestly, I'm done with him. I don't want him at my wedding, I won't want to see his face, I don't want him to be my fiancé's best man. Sorry to disappoint, I know a lot of you were calling for his head. I was the same mindset for most of my life until I was put into the shoes I am in now. It's hard. Trying to throw that love out the window and leave is hard. It was also a misunderstanding, so I overreacted anyway. I do want to thank you all. I expected my post would be like many others, get a few replies and that's it. Got a lot more than that and most were helpful. Some were jokes, some were just trying to convert me to be straight, and some were trying to gaslight me. Thank you for the actual advice, and I'm sorry so many people related to my struggles. I expected a few, but I got at least 100 DMs talking about their trauma and how it's affected them in their adult lives and how they think I should move forward. Bittersweet, but I'm glad I wasn't alone in my struggles. For the questions, are you in therapy? Yes, I'm in individual therapy. Have been for years. I'm also on meds. Mood stabilizers, benzos and antidepressants. Therapy only goes so far. I know the post made me sound kinda psychotic, but I also left all my meds at the apartment, so I was on day 8 of clean living and I skipped last therapy appointment. I never claimed to make good decisions. Is there another woman? No. Why would you get with a bi man when this is pretty common? This is not pretty common, emo, and you're biphobic. I don't have any issues with his sexual orientation. If anything, I like he's not completely gay. No, I will not elaborate on. Why? Why didn't you just talk to him? Because if he said there was woman he was looking at, I would have found the nearest bridge and YOLO'd off it. What kind of friends would say that shit to you? They're his friends, really. When I moved here in my early 20s, I met him quickly. Less than a year when I got here, we went on a date. He introduced me to his friends and his friends became my friends. I would hang out with them without my fiancé and vice versa. In hindsight, I don't think they were being malicious, they've always been nice and welcoming, excluding the one person. They just liked seeing us together and didn't want to see us apart. Almost a decade of seeing a couple and I can understand they'd want to see us last. I don't have any negative feelings towards them. Are you going to bring up moving? Few people asked after I brought up what he would have to do to get me back immediately. I said move. No, I won't bring it up, I think. I do want to, I'd love to be closer to his family since I don't have any and I love being around them. They all live in Seattle and we're in Boston. Don't get to see them much. If I do bring it up, I might wait till this situation clears up completely. Why are you denying who he is? I'm not. He can jerk off to women. Ick. He can't touch em though. How can you throw 9 years out the window over a question? It's the one question I asked him not to bring up. I thought I made that clear in my post. I can overlook a lot of things and I do, but that one thing I can't. I still can't. If he was serious about it, I don't think I'd stay. I'm not gonna let him walk outside, fuck a woman and come back with cookies in my hand and a smile on my face. Did that feel good, baby? Here's a cookie and some milk. BFFR, you may be walked on in your life, that is not me though. Do roleplay in the bedroom, he might just want a feminine aspect. I will not upload a picture of myself, it defeats the purpose of making a trashy account. However, I am 6 feet 4 inches, I weigh 230-ish pounds, I work in a garage, I've spent 15 hours a week in the gym for the last 7 years and I have scars all over my body with a few on my face. My skin is not soft and I look like if I meet you in a dark alley I'll shank you. I'm not feminine. I think he'd laugh if he saw me walk out in lingerie and a wig. I would too, TBH. That's it for now. I might update after a bit of therapy, probably not. Ike. I don't think many will care after they read I didn't chastise him. Thank you again for all the actually helpful advice. I didn't expect any of it, but I'm very grateful. Edit, y'all judged the fuck out of me for not demanding he drop his lifelong best friend. Ike. We talked last night, I brought up my issues and he said he was leaning towards cutting him off entirely anyway. They're no longer friends. Y'all can stay on your toxic relationships making demands and ultimatums. I will not be doing any of that though. I'm not a doormat. Y'all genuinely sound bitter. I'm not alone like you or I'd argue with the wall. Oop, I don't want to tell him too. It's a thing I used to do with isolating people and I don't want to do that to him. I'm hoping he will just tell me why and do it himself, but I think therapy will make him realize the actual reason. Now on to second story. Wife forbade our son from cooking, labeled it unmanly after he'd done a dish better than expected. Now I'm doubting everything. My wife has always been the one to cook around the house, and as an Italian, it's one of the reasons I fell so hard for her. I've offered to help out in the kitchen or even cook for her sometimes, but she's always firmly, yet politely, told me no, and I can't really blame her because I did not get either of my parents' good cooking genes. Because of this, I've always been sure to thank her for every meal, and I've taught my children to do the same. For the past year or so, my son has been watching a ton of cooking videos on YouTube and TikTok, and he's really been wanting to try his hand at cooking. My wife was happy to teach him, and at least twice a week the two of them will go out to the store, buy ingredients for a meal he found on TikTok and come home and make it. It's been awesome seeing them bonding more, since they haven't really had much overlap in interests before this. About a month ago after dinner, my son asked his mom if he could try making us all a meal on his own. I said it sounded like a great idea, and she hemmed and hawed for a little while before agreeing. So that Saturday she took him to the store to get his ingredients, and then he got to work. She supervised here and there, but he insisted that she didn't need to, so eventually she came to the living room and sat with my daughter and I, looking a little bit dejected, so I reassured her that I was sure he'll still want to cook with her, he just wanted to try it out on his own. That seemed to help out a little, but she still seemed a little off. When he finished and we all sat down to eat, I was honestly surprised at just how good he managed to do on his own. I feel bad saying it, but even after a year or so of cooking with his mother, I expected him to mess up more than he did. I wanted to encourage this interest of his, so I was sure to let him know while I was eating how good he did, and gently bring up the few mistakes he had made. I did it a lot more than I usually would with my wife's cooking, and in hindsight I can see that that's what started all of this. His sister, being his little sister, was not as supportive as I was, and quite rudely insulted his cooking. I was going to tell her to mind her manners and be thankful that he cooked for us when my wife made a sound and pushed her plate away, before agreeing and saying that it was too salty and overcooked. This took me aback, and I could tell my son took it hard too, as his mood visibly dropped. I didn't say anything at the time, since my wife and I never argue in front of the kids, and I just kept up the praise of my son's cooking as his mother picked at the plate for a little while longer before she took her and our daughter's plates to the kitchen. A little while later, I went to check on my son, and I could tell that he had been crying, so I comforted him, told him I was sure his mother loved the food and that she was probably just having a bad day, not to take it personally. Then later, once the kids were asleep, I confronted her about it, and she tried to just brush it off, but I pushed and she got mad and said that I complimented his cooking far more than I ever complimented hers. This caught me off guard, since I didn't expect my wife to be jealous of our son, and I unfortunately let out an involuntary scoff at this. She blew up at me for laughing, and we ended up arguing for a while before eventually I managed to explain that I was complimenting him so much because I wanted to encourage him to keep cooking, and she even admitted that she shouldn't have been so harsh about it. She said she would apologize to him, and I figured that everything was settled. That Monday, when I was driving my son to school, I noticed he wasn't acting normal, and looking out the window, trying to hide his face from me. I asked him what was wrong, and he told me he was fine, but I could tell he was fighting back tears, so I asked him again and he broke and told me that after I had left to get the car started, she told him that she was going to be cooking alone again from now on. I was furious about this, but kept my cool and told him I would talk to her about it, bought him a snack from the store before dropping him off at school. I left work early so I could get home before the kids and talk to my wife. I'll admit I didn't handle it as well as I could have, and we ended up in a shouting match where I was calling her childish for being so vindictive towards our son because she was upset with me, and she called him a baby and said he shouldn't be so sad about not being allowed to cook since it wasn't a man's job to do so anyway. We ended up leaving each other alone to cool down, and when our kids got home, my wife took our daughter out, and came back later with a load of toys and clothes for her. I knew immediately what she was trying to do, and that night I told her that I would not let her use the money I make for our family to punish my son. She didn't take this well and we ended up arguing again. I slept in the guest room, and have been up to this point. For this past month my wife has kept up this vindictive showering of our daughter with attention and gifts, while almost entirely ignoring my son. I've been talking to my parents and brother about this, and while they agree that she's wrong, they also don't see it as that big of a problem and think it'll sort itself out. At this point, with how she's been treating our son, I'm starting to fall out of love with her, but I also don't want to just jump to divorce if there's something that I can do to fix this whole situation. I can honestly say that we've never had a fight this big. Sure, we bicker every now and then, but she's never taken that out on my son in the past. I feel responsible and guilty about what happened, and I've been trying to do nice things for my son, when I can, but I also don't want to mirror my wife's behavior, so I've also been taking my daughter with us about half the time we go places, but whenever we do, she's been very rude and always talks about all the stuff her mother does for her lately, because she knows it bothers her brother. Seeing the way my wife has been treating our son has made me second guess our marriage, but I don't want to just jump straight to divorce either. Update 1. Short recap. My wife and son cooked dinner together most nights for about a year. My son wanted to try cooking dinner on his own, which my wife accepted, but started acting funny. She ended up rudely criticizing his meal, then the next day she told him that she would do the cooking on her own from then on, and after I confronted her about this, she started neglecting/emotionally abusing him while shoveling positivity onto our daughter. The first thing I did after making my previous post was take my son to my parents' house to tell them what was happening from his mouth. I figured they may be more receptive to seeing the pain their grandson was going through and not just write it off like they had with me. They ended up understanding, and supportive of my next move, which was kicking my wife out till she worked through whatever problem she was going through. Next I went to a lawyer and consulted with him. He told me it would be best to have the papers ready to go, even if I wasn't sure I wanted the divorce yet, because it's better to get it done as quick as possible if I decided to go through with it, because in Canada you have to separate for a year, or prove abuse or adultery. I took the kids to my folks' house the next Saturday and came back with my mother. I let her talk with my wife first, then when they were done I told her that I needed her to leave the house until she sorted out whatever was causing her to act this way to our son. She, surprisingly, agreed to this. I'm guessing hearing things from my mother knocked some sense into her, as they were always quite close. I told her that my parents were willing to let her stay there during the time because her parents lived too far away, or I could put her up in a nearby motel. I would also pay for her to see a therapist every week, which I told her was mandatory for fixing things. Our kids spent the night with my parents and we moved her out the next day. We both sat with the kids and told them what was happening. Our son understood, but our daughter didn't and was quite upset, but eventually we calmed her down. Things went well for the first month or so. She went to all of the weekly appointments, and I met her for dinner a few nights a week with the kids, and she seemed to be treating our son properly again. I was really hopeful that she had been making progress. Then the Friday after her 5th therapy appointment she sent me a wall of text messages about how I was an asshole, and I was trying to steal her children from her, and how I was probably fucking someone on the side. I tried calling her to see what she was talking about, but I think she shut her phone off. I called my mother and she told me that my wife had left the house earlier that day with all of her stuff without saying anything to my mom. I'm not 100% sure what happened next, since my wife refuses to tell me most details, and I can't get in contact with the friend she was with. The best I can piece together was that she had told her best friend about what was happening, and that friend started telling her all about how I was just trying to kick her out and steal her kids. She then moved in with her friend, and went on a week-long bender of clubbing and drinking and drugs. When we were younger we did our fair share of stupid shit together, so while this was surprising, it was most likely her dumbass friends convincing her to relive the good old days. I hadn't heard anything for about a week, then I got a text from her friend, telling me I was a loser, that my wife was too good for me, and that she was fucking a younger guy. I tried to demand she give my wife the phone so I could talk with her, but I never got a reply. I screenshotted the text for evidence if I needed it. I ended up getting a call from the hospital at like 3 in the morning that Sunday. My wife had overdosed on something, and was dropped off at the ER by someone who didn't stick around. Since I was her emergency contact, they reached out to me. I called my mom to come watch the kids and headed over there. They managed to get her stabilized, and were treating her. I stuck around for a few hours and she was in and out of consciousness, and when she wasn't very talkative. When she properly woke up, she started apologizing for everything, and that's when I found out the few details I know about her friend and the bender. I asked her if she had been fucking someone else like her friend said, and she didn't reply, which was as much of an answer as I needed. She kept trying to apologize and I just kept my cool and told her this wasn't the time or place for this. We ended up leaving at about 8 a.m. the next day. I got her back to my parents' place, got her into bed, and just before I left, I put the papers on the table beside the bed and told her that I expected her to sign them within a week and that I had proof she cheated on me during her bender. I had told my parents I was planning on doing this on the phone, so I wasn't just dumping this drama on them without warning. The kids are both doing fine. They don't know anything of what happened with their mother or the divorce. All they know is that my wife is still moved out, and that she's busy getting better, so we're not gonna be seeing her as much. I'll probably tell them in a couple weeks whenever school lets out for the summer so it doesn't affect their learning. Over the next couple weeks I've gotten countless calls from her, ranging from begging for a second chance, to screaming at me that she hated me and was going to make my life hell, going back and forth every other day. I've also been getting vitriolic texts from her family and friends calling my all sorts of names and threatening me that if I don't drop the divorce I'll regret it, all of which have been screenshotted. My parents agree that divorce is for the best, but they're questioning my timing, and wondering if I shouldn't have picked a better time to do this than when she was fresh out of the hospital. I'm 100% sure I want her out of my life, and I plan on going for full custody of my children as I don't want them around my wife if this behavior is what she's willing to stoop to. And while I do want it done as soon as possible, I'm wondering if I should take back the papers and tell her I've get my mind, at least until she's a bit more stable? ETA, I saw comments suggesting I take my kids to therapy to explain the situation to them. I have a session set up with a therapist in a week, just wanted to wait a tiny bit longer for their school to be as finished as possible.